Hello, friends, and welcome to the InterWorld Podcast, where we explore the intersection of personal and collective transformation. My name is Yasha S. Wagner, and I'm a PhD researcher in the field of psychology, well-being, and spirituality, as well as a founder of the InterWorld Institute for Inner World Peace. You can learn more about our various nonprofit initiatives by going to interworld.org. Today, I have the great pleasure and honor of speaking with an old friend and an inspiration, Alais Clay. Alais is an accomplished hip hop artist that's currently on tour with DubFX throughout Eastern Europe. Alais Clay is also mostly based out of Costa Rica, but is still connected to StarTribe Alliance and various Earth-based community projects that we met through in Colorado. And Alais, in addition to being a hip-hop artist, is an entrepreneur who supports herself through her own company, which is called Critical Mass Media. So this is Alais Clay's media company. And I know that we have a lot to discuss today, a lot to explore. I'm really excited for this conversation. So without further ado, here's our interview with Alais Clay. Hey, friend, how's it going? Welcome.
Good.
Yeah.
Good to reconnect. Thank you for having me on the InterWorlds, Reconnecting Worlds.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks for coming on. It's good to see you again after some years. I know that the intro doesn't always give justice to your story, so I'd like to introduce guests to just share with the audience who you are, what you're all about, anything like key highlights in your personal journey in life, and what you feel your mission is that you're fulfilling here with your work. Big questions from the get-go.
Big question. Well, about myself, I consider myself an artist, in many forms. I love hip hop, but I also don't like to completely box myself into that and try to bend genres a bit. And I also love to play with visual arts and design. I launched Critical Mass Media Design a couple years ago and work on video editing, websites, all kinds of different media projects, also supporting other solutionaries or people, that reach out that are also working on projects and businesses that impact the world in a positive way. I like to support these kinds of endeavors. And my mission in the world for many years, probably since my early 20s, has really, what comes to mind is just kind of speaking truth to power, and I think truth is a vague thing, but we're fed so many just narratives and a lot of illusion and just commercialism, consumerism from all angles, and the signal that we're fed all the time. And so part of my mission in the world, I consider, is to bring power to an alternate, a signal of care for humanity, of unity, of empowerment, empowering people in different ways. That may be through music, that may be, through videos that help inspire, but also through face-to-face interactions, conversations. I love connecting with youth, doing music with youth, and art, and just find, wherever I am, wanting to connect with people on a local level to empower on an individual basis myself, really to deprogram the conditioning that's been placed on me since I was a child and become the fullest, freest expression of myself. And in that process, help others to see, ways of conditioning and programming that are bombarding us, honestly, quite at all times, and just reconnect to that natural earth-based signal.
I love it. Yes, thank you. And I'll probably towards the end ask you more about what you think that conditioning and that illusion is all about. But I want to start off digging deeper into some of the positive aspects of what it is that you are representing and promoting in the world with your work and your art. I also want to say that I didn't even remember that you were doing video editing and productions of that type. And that's really interesting for me to hear. There may be some collaboration opportunities to explore there. So I just want to plant that seed. We're probably filming a docu-series of a trip to Japan next year. And there's a chance that we're looking for some videography help with that project. So maybe we
Cool.
can, be in touch.
Yeah, I would love to help.
Where can people learn more about that part of your work, like see samples or? Okay,
Criticalmassmediadesign.com.
all right, good to know. So I guess honestly, right off the bat, there's a couple of things that come up. So one is I'm hearing a lot of um, coming back to earth-based natural way of being, is that kind of frequency of being attuned to our own true nature and the natural environment and the forces and powers of the natural world is what I'm hearing. And I just want to ask you more about your experience with that, what that means, like where are you situated in Costa Rica, and what's it like for you connecting with the land there, and coming from Colorado and other parts of the world, like what's your involvement with that earth-based component? What do you mean by earth-based projects and things like that? Yeah.
Right. Um, well, by earth base, I guess I just mean connected to natural rhythms. And for myself, um, too, I think it's been this process of discovering that for myself. I was originally born in Colombia, in Barranquilla, Colombia, and moved to the States, to Miami, at a very young age. So most of my childhood upbringing was in a very big city in Miami. And if you've been to Miami, it's a fun place to visit. But there's not a lot of like old nature. A lot of the trees and the greenery that you've seen are very architecturally planned, rows, designs, and not so much remnants of the old nature that was around. And so part of it is probably growing up in big city environments and then moving to Colorado and, connecting with a lot of shared friends and tribe there. That felt even more so, more natural, like more connected to the mountains. And, but there's still, within the city life and what is expected of us, just as humans in the day to day grind and pace of just keeping up with all the basics, just to keep up with your rent and just, living and just the day to day and month to month grind that many people are on, and, what that connects us to. And, things as, you are well aware of on the eco village where you at, just learning more about our dependencies, and like our connection to food, for example, is one of the most basic parts of our humanity that so many people don't have that connection to, and that I didn't have that connection to for a really, really long time. So part of it is just remembering, these simple ways of our humanity, of like reconnecting to our food sources. What is that? Really learning about the water sources around me and where does that come from and how are they affected and how are we impacting them, and all of these things that I didn't really pay much mind to for a long time. And also in my 20s, and throughout, I really struggled a lot with my mental health. I was actually diagnosed bipolar, and I was in and out of mental health systems for years. And I have naturally course corrected over years. I feel like primarily through diet, just through diet and healthier habits. But I feel that so much of there's a train going by.
It's okay. It's your train of thought.
It's my train of thought. But yeah, just so much of what some people will call mental illness, or all these things that we're seeing express, and a lot in the youth and people in their young 20s, and late teens, really coming from this, what I see as like the soul or the spirit rebelling to a culture and a way of life that is not actually natural to our being, and we feel that something is off. And so there's like a reshifting within that. And for me, just getting a little bit closer to nature and closer to community has helped, just like recalibrate my nervous system in a way, and being in a way that I feel I'm healthier and able to show up in a better way to collaborate with my peers and others to build together.
Beautiful. Yeah, this is very resonant with even the reason why we called this podcast and are changing all our nonprofit projects to InterWorld, because you're describing, to me, it sounds like the interconnectedness of our inner world and the world we live in, and how when we are conditioned by our upbringing and our surroundings to be disconnected from the resources that keep us alive physically in nature, then we also end up feeling internally disconnected from like the source of our own life force, which is that animating soul, right? And so it's like when we're separated from even an awareness of what those things are, and even a knowledge that do they exist, right? We grow up not only disconnected but unconscious of if they even exist. Like, what do you mean soul? What do you mean, where does my water come from? Like, it's just water, it comes from the sink, I'm just alive, it's just all automatic. And when we have that disconnection, then the symptoms pop up on both sides, where it's like, oh, now I'm totally dependent on a fragile system that could easily crumble and take advantage of me, and so on in terms of my day-to-day needs like food and land and shelter, because I'm kind of helpless there. But then we also end up with a fragile state of mind, like our mindset is also could crumble easily because of that interconnectedness of the inner and outer worlds, is what I'm taking away from what you shared there. So I think that's a really important insight. And then I think it also brings up a question of what can we do about it, and how do we make a transition into reconnecting with ourselves and with nature, and empowering ourselves to kind of create our own reality. Let's say that might sound oversimplified or cliche, but it's like, how do we actually connect to that empowerment of determining what direction we're going from the inside, and then collectively too, right? And that is that intersection of the personal and collective transformation. So I guess I want to ask you on that note about StarTribe, and especially Nomadic University. I don't know too much
Mm-hmm.
about it, but I'm really interested in it because one of our main projects with InterWorld is creating a global hybrid holistic academy that starts from within, but ultimately serves and supports the civilization level paradigm shift that's happening. So it sounds very similar and aligned with what y'all are doing. And we also have so many mutual friends and collaborators that I just want to take this opportunity while I'm on a call with you to hear about Nomadic U and how we might align there.
Yeah, absolutely. It sounds super in alignment. And so Nomadic University was born, I think the first year that we started doing it maybe was in 2020, maybe the year before. But It came from initially, we were looking for sites for an eco village in Colorado. And when we hadn't, we hadn't manifested the land, we still wanted to activate this, all ages school of life, if you will. And without having the based location for it, it was like, okay, well, let's activate this anyway, and we can activate it anywhere that people are willing to host it. So sometimes it may be online, sometimes it may be at a farm, sometimes it might be, at a conference center, a retreat center, completely depending on the case, and who's involved. And it's completely donation based, community sourced. So we put the call out, and we have a basis of 13 guilds is kind of what we operate on. And it's kind of these 13 wheels that are part of a whole functioning society. And I wouldn't say it's really something that we created. I feel like it's almost like a shared channeled model. Like I feel like different peoples and communities over thousands of years, have maybe used different names for these wheels, but they encompass, very similar aspects of community design, infrastructure, science, care for the water, food, spirituality, economics, all these different things. And so putting it out to people and then offering, people that have been dedicating their lives to learning in these areas to share their wisdom and skill based, skill sharing and wisdom sharing, and offering it open source for people, and raising what we can, with donations to share back to the facilitators, and creating a base, for open source knowledge where we can all learn and grow from each other is the basis. And it became nomadic because we didn't have a base for it at first. So now it's like we can host it anywhere.
Well, there's another possibility for connection in the future. I know Ava Lene is connected to it, and other people that we're both pretty close to and have worked with. So I'll have to reach out to y'all at some point. I saw that you did it at Double Rainbow Ranch last time. I think that's Paul Temple's
We did.
place. Yeah.
We did.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It was beautiful. We hadn't done one in person for about 2 years. And so it was a beautiful reactivation and initiation. We called this one an initiation, and we did a little bit more of a ritual ceremony in the evening, and really with this theme of each one of us initiating ourselves into our next level of being, and as guardians on this planet here and now, initiating ourselves into that role and what we need to actualize in our fullest potential and what we need to let go of to also activate that next level potential.
Priceless. Well, keep us in mind. We'd be happy to consider hosting one of the next ones
Awesome.
in the future here at the Eco Village. Yeah,
Make a
that'd be
note
cool.
of that right now.
Yeah, glad that that's inspiring for you too. Let's see what happens. So it's really good segue there, what you brought up about approaching it more ceremonially and having an initiation component to it about activating your full potential as people, because that's actually the general direction I wanted to go in next with this conversation, which is, as I saw you perform, even you played one of our gigs when we were very first getting started, like a decade ago, and definitely like interwove and saw you perform in different places. And I saw over those years that I was seeing you in different gatherings, your transformation somehow, even in the short moments that I got to pick up your music and your presence, like I saw your growth and transformation as a person really shining through your performances and your music, and they became prayer performances and they became more ceremonial. And I started hearing you talking about in Spanish and the medicina and all these things. I was like, oh, wow, this is cool. And I know now we both rap in Spanish and different languages. So it's kind of fun to watch that growth. And so I wanted to ask you about your contact with spiritual practices and traditions and how these ways of prayer and ceremony have influenced your path and your artistry, because I think that's something that a lot of people are growing into when they reject the kind of Piscean system that we're moving out of, let's say, and they abandon some old tradition and lineage that wasn't working. Then there's also like can be a lostness, and I think that a lot of us are growing into finding that there's deep wisdom and transmission and lineage that's still available for us to learn from elders and so on. So I'm just curious if you could speak to that a little bit.
Well, I've always been a very prayerful person. I remember when I was a little girl, I would pray, I think, routinely in the morning and at night at my bed. I would pray for everyone. I was like praying for everyone in my family, for anyone that was going hungry. And I was raised Roman Catholic. So when I was young, I remember having those like prayer moments at my bed all the time. And then after, yeah, some years of going to church and really being fed really heavy with the church indoctrination, and I think I just didn't really resonate with that, and I kind of lost my connection for some time to what I felt was God and spirituality. And then as I got older, I witnessed some things that to me were just like these moments, like miracle moments, where I was like, there is no way, that person would have even survived, if something didn't intervene there. Something like these miracle moments that made me believe again in like an extra dimensional force here with us beyond what we see. And in my 20s, and then 30s, I think the most powerful point for me, of connecting beyond any, I don't follow any religion, though I do connect, with different aspects of Buddhism, Native American cultures, Taoism as well. I don't subscribe to any one religion, but I feel that connecting with a group of people around a fire and making prayers is one of the most powerful rituals and so simple that any of us can do. I feel like whenever I'm around a fire with people, whether I know them or not, I feel that I'm at home and that I'm with family and that I'm connecting with something ancient and very present and very raw. And that's one of my favorite ways to connect with spirit, honestly, around a fire with people in a
I'm
circle.
honest, yeah. Sorry, I don't want to interrupt, but you got me really excited here. I'm really glad that that's where your share led to. You heard me at the beginning in the intro talking a little bit about my PhD research, and my dissertation is actually on alchemy and the elements. Finding through the research is mostly about the power of fire keeping and fire ceremony, and this is a completely universal thing, right? All different human cultures since time immemorial have been keeping fire, and fire has been this sacred element that can create transformation, burn away the old, and illuminate the new, and so on. But I just wanted to share that with you because you came back around to fire as like the way that you connect with spirit. And actually, one of the things I love about it is that not only is fire like the origin of alchemy and even modern chemistry and all of our human sciences up to rocket ships and so on, It's also literally 1 to 2 million years old, which is actually older than modern Western science says humans are. It's like in early hominid evolution, fire keeping emerged. And so and they were ceremonial fires, they were fires that enabled us to gather and communicate and observe the stars and so on. And it's just so fascinating, and like heat foods and medicines and all kinds of substances eventually, also like metals and all kinds of things. So fire is like super powerful. And I just wanted to name that and say that it's interesting to me because there's all these arguments like how old are the pyramids and how old is the Sphinx, and what if these things are 10,000 years old instead of 2,000 and there was a flood and all this stuff. But the thing is, that's all tiny amounts of time compared to the age of the actual ceremonies and stories and fire, especially, that we know have been here. So yeah, you're talking about the oldest, most timeless way that all humans connect with the spirit.
It's so true. I love connecting with fire and fire tending, and I love that connection with other people. And I've recently, in the last year in particular, my last EP that I released was called Planeta Flow. And earlier in the year, I did a tour in Costa Rica, around Costa Rica. And as part of that tour, we also did prayers for the water. We're at the beginning of the tour. We collected waters from sites around where we were, and just infusing prayers into the water, have really steadily just been making prayers for peace, for the planet and the collective, and merging waters from different places, carrying these prayers and these frequencies through these waters, and then offering them back to the waters so they're carried out through the waterways and the world. And what you just said about the fire, and how old this element is, reminds me of wisdom that my partner had shared with me about the waters, that, it rains and these waters recycle, and the waters that we cry and our tears that are then recycled back up into the heavens. Like, we could literally be crying waters that have been recycled, since the times of our ancestors, and like the same waters, that are living with us now and present with us now, that carry all this information. And so that has also been more present in my awareness, and yeah, in this time, and like carrying the prayers for the planet right now through the waterways.
Hmm. Thank you. Yeah, very important. You also mentioned Eastern traditions like Buddhism, and you said at the very beginning that you might sum up your mission as speaking truth to power, which in, I believe, Sanskrit terms would be called satyagraha, I believe, the power of speaking truth. Sat being truth. And I know Gandhi popularized this approach and idea a lot as a nonviolent form of resistance. And your t-shirt says revolution without healing is a recipe for disaster. So
True.
this is, yeah, I feel like really reflecting that same principle that our eco village, our organization is based on, of the importance of including both the personal and the collective change right now, and the changes, the inner world piece, right? So I guess I just wanted to invite you, before we get into hip hop a little more, to share any last thoughts about what that means to you, as far as what it is, what illusions you're confronting and challenging, so that we can overcome, and how you see the power of speaking truth to be a method or a tool for doing that.
Yes, well, there's so many things, and I've gone through this process of evolution myself, where a lot of my earlier music is been more so aggressive, and I'm like this is, this is what's true, and wake up. And if you're not on this tip, you're not awake. And like myself, really like maturing in my own growth, and also recognizing that it's not that black and white, and that we all have all of these different perspectives and facets of perspective, and um, you know based on where we live and our circumstance and all these different things. And so it's not that any one of us has the absolute truth, but I believe there is a frequency of truth that is undeniable. Like when a massive tree or a plant or something is growing under concrete, and there's only a matter of time before it busts through that thing. There's like this frequency of like what's just undeniably is, that I feel like people resonate with, and they know when they feel it. And one of those things, for example, like we were talking about, is that we are not separate from nature. To me, that's one of the biggest, I would say, messages, when all of these other things just disconnecting us in all these ways. I would say that's one of the main ones, that we're not separate from nature. We're part of it, and we get to own our place as a natural part of this planet that we live on.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you're sharing about that maturation of your perspective to see things in a more nuanced manner. I think that's so essential. And I'm glad you're saying it, because I've seen so many movements like Standing Rock, for instance, where the elders and the wisdom keepers were insisting that we're not protesting against something, we're protecting life, we're protecting water. It's not a protest, it's a protection. I think that that's a deeper, older, wiser attitude than just like resistance and protest and taking sides. Is like, well, what are we for instead of what are we against? And I take that attitude with the eco village, like I was sharing before we started recording, where we've got subterranean greenhouses we're installing now, and all kinds of systems like solar power and well water and community spaces. But the thing is, we're not doing that out of like a paranoia or an anger that like things are going to fall apart, and that you have to do this. It's more of an inspiration of like, wow, it's so fun to remember and learn how to take care of ourselves again, and for the future generations this will be useful. So even if it's not like a black and white thing, and we're not like against going to the city or watching a movie or something, at least there's this alternative option we're starting to experiment with, of coming back to the land and empowering ourselves. So it's like, yeah, just really important, I think, to get that sense of what's the as Buckminster Fuller said, what's the better alternative that's going to make the old model obsolete, instead of fighting against the old model. And there's probably more I could say
Yeah,
on that. Yeah, what were you going to say? Yeah.
yeah. The other thing that I just wanted to touch on is, speaking of interworlds, is just care, for our interrelations, our interrelatedness, like really, really getting across that we're not separate, that we are a family, that children in Gaza, in Palestine, in Israel, in Congo, all around the planet, that they're not separate from us. And we have this way of, and especially I feel like with the massive fear programming that's going on, there is this massive program of, as long as me and my family are okay, that's all that I need to worry about, because I'm just going to take care of us. And as long as we're okay, it's good. But that mentality is not helping us, evolve past these ways where we're just stomping out all of these other cultures and peoples across the planet. And we're seeing that more and more, like the walls between us are getting thinner and thinner. And so one of the things that I just continuously, raise my voice for is that unity and not allowing our brothers and sisters to fall through the cracks, no matter who's in power, no matter how they bully us and try to scare us into not speaking or complying.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, each of these topics is such a rabbit hole I could go into for so long, and I know this is a shorter feature episode today, so I won't go too much into it. But you did just spark for me on this topic of unity. One way that I love to illustrate that frequency of illusion and truth is in relation actually to the Abrahamic traditions and the core creedal statements and prayers in Arabic and Hebrew from those two Abrahamic lineages, where, for instance, La ilaha illallah can be translated to essentially mean there is nothing but God, or the only God is the one God, and so on. And there are statements in Hebrew that can be decoded, whether it's the Shema, like Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Ahad, and Einod Milvado. There are statements in both traditions that are core creedal slogans, essentially, and teachings, but because they're in a particular language, they are, some, in my opinion, misinterpreted to mean the exact opposite of what they're saying, which is so wild. Because you take a statement like there is only one true God, and all of the real God is that one God, and anything else is just an illusion and a name and an idol and so on. And you take that, and because it's in Hebrew and you think it's Adonai, or it's in Arabic and you think it's Allah, and so on, because of that, you actually look away from the actual point of the teaching, which is that it's one God and it's the God, and that's the only God. And the rest is actually dangerous. The rest is an illusion, that the idea of, no, it's this God or that God, those are the illusions. And it's actually one God. And that's the point of the teaching in both languages. They just happen to begin arguing about, oh, it's only the one God. It's like, yeah, no, it's only the one God. It's like you're just using different languages to say the same thing. And, obviously, I don't mean to make light of the political components that arise and so on. But from a spiritual perspective, I think that's an important teaching of, like, let's get over the illusion of translation and focus on the teaching itself, which is that there is just one.
Yeah, and that's so much of all the religions, where they take the actual scripts and what we're taught and are just 180 degrees the opposite, of what people were trying to share.
Mm-hmm.
Love thy neighbor.
Mm-hmm.
So hard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. So let's move on for our final topic with the time we have left. I want to ask you a little more about touring, about music. So you're living in Costa Rica. You mentioned Planeta Flow, and then it sounds like you were also featured on Dub FX's new album. And they're on a 3-month tour throughout Europe. You were on this Eastern European leg of the tour, which sounds super fun. And you were sharing a little bit off camera about how that's going. So I just want to invite you to share about really music, poetry, language. What's it like as a fellow multilingual lyricist and multi-genre musician and so on, and how's the tour going? Looks like you're doing awesome stuff, and not just on this tour. I see you post clips playing epic shows all over the world. So yeah, what's up with that? How are these shows going? How's your music going? How's the travels?
Yeah, well, this has been a wonderful experience and opportunity so far. Right now, just finished the first leg of the tour, and there's a little 3-week break. But the tour is Dub Effects and Wood Notes. Recently released this album called Open Secret Society, featuring myself, Presence, Sahida Absara, Tiki Tane, several others. It's a banger of an album. And so they're touring that through Europe. It's a 3-month tour. And I have jumped on for some of the dates. Been through Croatia, Serbia, Hungary, Slovakia, Austria. Coming back from the break, I'm going to be doing some dates in Germany, as well as the Netherlands. And what has been like most inspiring about it is seeing the level that Dub Effects, has gotten himself to independently. Um, he's so well received, across Europe, different places in the world, but seeing people's response and that he has not compromised, in his lyrics or his message, whereas an artist, I see over and over, how, yeah, people that are very outspoken, politically or on different social issues are not given, as big of a platform, to share. And they want to keep events, don't be too political, at the festivals or whatever it is, or not being shared to a label, all these different things. And just seeing, yeah, that he's not compromised in his lyrics and message and still has this awesome platform, and as well as presence. His music as well is super inspiring to me. Both of them, it's just very empowering. They're just really, really empowering lyrics. So it feels like soundtrack to evolution, revolution, all the nights, and then also feeling from the audience, meeting so many people in different countries that are sharing that frequency of unity and liberation and empowerment. And they're all like, yeah, it feels awesome. And I can say even in the US, I haven't felt so much of that like activist spirit crowd in a while. So it feels really good to be in places where, Eastern Europe has this strong history of revolution. And so that's maybe like, I don't know, a little like closer to the surface for some people. But it's felt, and yeah, it's been wonderful to visit a lot of these countries for the first time and be well received. And I have been doing some in Spanish, and yeah, even being in Eastern Europe and places that don't speak Spanish where it's still well received. And I'll always have some Latinos come up to me after the show, random Colombians and, in Slovakia and the Czech Republic. Yeah, so that's been really fun. And just making connections and meeting new people and sharing the music in more places in hopes that it'll continue to ripple out and share that
Hmm.
frequency.
Yeah. Incredible. Well, thank you for doing that. It sounds so exciting. And I know you're in Austria right now. You were in Hungary a few days ago. So it's always fun to plan podcast interviews with people that are all over other side of the world for us, because we got to coordinate the time zones. And I know it's getting late there. So thank you for doing this. And I guess in case you ever get a chance to tune into other podcast episodes, since you mentioned the revolutionary spirit and politics and history of Eastern Europe, I was telling you my family is from Ukraine, and my mom was actually a dissident in the Soviet Union. She was a very high profile dissident that was exiled from Moscow and was resisting the totalitarian regime there. The head editor of the only real news source in the country, which was completely illegal. Typing 1984 cover to cover secretly after it's smuggled into as a banned book and all kinds of stuff like that. So I'm mentioning that because that's what I grew up with, and I'm
Wow,
hoping to interview her on this platform a little later this year. So maybe you'll get to tune into that one because it'd probably be right up your alley.
that would be amazing. You should.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, if you want to close us out, I don't want to put you on the spot, but if you want to go just like a cappella, free form, give us any poetry, any bars, or anything you want to share for a final hurrah here. I'd love to hear you spit some lyrics for us, as a few of our guests have,
Um,
if you feel open to it.
yeah, yeah,
No
yeah.
pressure. Yeah.
Well, I have a prayer I like to share around the fire. Um, it's definitely different than a lot of my music. but people can discover. You can find my music at alaisclay.live, by the way. And okay, something to close out on in the spirit of interworlds and interconnectedness. Calling all angels, beaming all stations, calling all stars, all planets, all nations. Calling on love to all my relations, all of our family, all colors, all races. Calling on us, together we face it. Calling on our skills and the wisdom of the ancients. Calling on the wind, calling on the thunder, singing through the fire, and our prayers grow stronger. Calling to the gods, calling to the waters, calling to the warriors that live in each other, calling on my sisters, calling on my brothers, calling on our tribe for the life of our mother, calling on our Father, calling on the Son, calling on us all to come together as one, calling on our kin, calling on the winged ones, calling all creatures, all kinds, all kingdoms, calling all times, calling all dimensions, clearing these lines for the healing and ascension, calling on our guides, calling on our allies, calling on our own inner wisdom to realize we've arrived. We've arrived. Right here in the interworlds.
Wow. I swear to God, I got goosebumps throughout that spoken word piece. So thank you for that prayer and invocation. And I want to just leave it there. Thank you for closing such a beautiful way. And until next
Thank
time.
you. Thank you for having me, Yash.